There is a scene in the very first episode of Better Call Saul that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of show you are about to watch. Jimmy McGill, not yet Saul Goodman, not quite, stands in a parking lot outside a courthouse in Albuquerque, New Mexico, wearing a suit that costs more than it looks like it cost, practicing a speech to no one in particular. He is rehearsing for a life he does not yet have, performing confidence for an audience of zero. It is, in retrospect, the thesis statement of 6 breathtaking seasons of television, a man auditioning for a version of himself he will eventually, catastrophically, inhabit. Better Call Saul premiered in 2015 as a prequel to Breaking Bad, one of the most acclaimed dramas in television history, and immediately faced the cruelest of critical expectations. How do you follow a show about the fall of a chemistry teacher turned methamphetamine kingpin? You do it, as creators Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould discovered, by zooming in on a smaller, quieter, and ultimately more devastating human story. Breaking Bad was about a man who chose evil. Better Call Saul is about a man who never quite got the chance to choose good. Better Call Saul is not a prequel. It is a eulogy, a long, brilliant, aching eulogy for a man who never quite existed. Over the course of 6 seasons and 63 episodes, this show carved out its own identity so completely that for many viewers, this critic included, it surpassed its predecessor. It is a legal drama, a crime thriller, a character study, a noir tragedy, and a meditation on identity, self-deception, and the unbearable weight of what we owe the people who love us. It is, without exaggeration, one of the finest pieces of long-form storytelling produced in the history of the medium. The show's opening seasons are, by design, patient. Critics who came expecting the propulsive moral acceleration of Breaking Bad found themselves slightly unsettled by the quieter rhythms of Better Call Saul's early going, and that was entirely the point. Seasons 1 and 2 are the sunlit portion of a story that will eventually plunge into darkness. They allow us to fall in love with Jimmy McGill before they ask us to watch him disappear. We learn about Jimmy's history as a low-level conman in Cicero, Illinois, Slippin' Jimmy, as the locals knew him. We meet his brother Chuck, Michael McKean, a brilliant but emotionally brittle senior partner at a prestigious Albuquerque law firm, who has quietly and systematically undermined Jimmy's legitimate legal aspirations for years. The sibling dynamic between Jimmy and Chuck is the moral engine of the entire series, and McKean delivers what may be the most underrated performance in the history of American prestige television. Chuck is not a villain. He is something far more unsettling. A man who genuinely believes he is doing the right thing, and who is wrong in ways he will never be able to acknowledge. Bob Odenkirk, meanwhile, performs a miracle across 6 seasons. The comedic actor known primarily for sketch comedy reveals himself to be one of the finest dramatic performers of his generation. His Jimmy McGill is a man of enormous natural charisma and genuine legal talent, perpetually sabotaged by an inability to resist the elegant shortcut. Odenkirk plays him with warmth, wit, and a bruised quality that makes every small betrayal feel like watching a knuckle split open in slow motion. Bob Odenkirk performs a miracle across 6 seasons. His Jimmy McGill is warm, witty, and bruised, a man of enormous talent perpetually undone by the seduction of the easy way. The legal cases that populate these early seasons, the Sandpiper Elder fraud class action, the battles over the Davis and Maine partnership, are meticulously constructed and surprisingly gripping. Gilligan and Gould take law seriously, and the procedural architecture of the show's early seasons gives it a groundedness that makes the later criminal escalations land with genuine weight. These are not set dressing. They are the stage on which Jimmy's soul is quietly being auctioned off, one compromise at a time. If Better Call Saul has a secret weapon beyond Odenkirk himself, it is Rhea Seehorn's Kim Wexler. A character invented entirely for this show, she appears nowhere in Breaking Bad. Kim becomes its moral center, its tragic heart, and, in the show's final chapters, the key that unlocks everything. Seehorn plays her with extraordinary restraint and intelligence, a woman of ferocious professional ambition and genuine ethical principle who is, slowly and terribly, seduced by the same romantic outlaw energy that makes Jimmy both so compelling and so dangerous. Kim's arc across 6 seasons is perhaps the most profound in the entire series. She begins as Jimmy's conscience and slowly, subtly, becomes something else. A co-conspirator, an addict of adrenaline and transgression, a woman who finds in Jimmy's world of cons and schemes of freedom she cannot find in the legitimate legal system she has sacrificed everything to enter. The show never judges Kim cheaply. It shows us exactly why a person of her intelligence and integrity could arrive at the choices she makes. That is what separates great drama from mere entertainment. The romance between Jimmy and Kim is the most emotionally complicated relationship in either of the two shows that share this universe. They love each other in ways that are real and specific and mutually destructive, and the show is wise enough never to reduce that love to mere dysfunction. They bring out the best in each other and the worst. The scene in Season 4 where they sit in a parking lot eating sandwiches after a spectacularly successful con is one of the most erotically charged moments in recent television history, and not a single item of clothing is removed. That is the level of writing this show operates at. Running parallel to Jimmy and Kim's story is the criminal underworld that will eventually swallow the entire Breaking Bad universe. Jonathan Banks reprises his role as Mike Ehrmantraut, fixer, enforcer, ex-cop, and grandfather, and the show finds depths in this character that Breaking Bad only gestured toward. Mike's story in Better Call Saul is a tragedy of competence, a man so good at navigating the criminal world that he cannot escape it, whose every skill makes him more indispensable to the machine that is grinding him down. Giancarlo Esposito's Gus Fring, another Breaking Bad veteran, here receives his full origin story, or rather, the story of how the polished, terrifying Gus of the Parent Show came to be. The scenes between Gus and Mike in the show's middle seasons are some of the finest workplace drama you will ever watch, if your workplace happens to be a narco empire. Their dynamic, mutual respect, mutual suspicion, the cold logic of two men who need each other and trust no one, is riveting. Tony Dalton's Lalo Salamanca deserves special mention as one of the most electrifying antagonists in the show's history. Charming, unpredictable, and genuinely frightening, Lalo represents chaos in a show that has otherwise been precisely architected. His cat-and-mouse game with Gus and Mike across seasons 4 through 6 provides the show's most purely thrilling plot mechanics, while never losing sight of character. When the story finally resolves his arc, it does so with a sudden, brutal efficiency that leaves you gasping. One of the show's most formally daring choices is its black and white framing device. Intercut throughout the entire run are scenes set after the events of Breaking Bad, following a fugitive Jimmy McGill now living under the assumed identity of Gene Takovic, manager of a Cinnabon in Omaha, Nebraska. These sequences, shot in crisp monochrome, set to a different emotional register entirely, function as a constant reminder of where this story ends. The Gene storyline is Breaking Bad's world rendered as existential nightmare. Jimmy McGill became Saul Goodman, who became a ghost, who became Gene. Each transformation stripped something away. In the black and white sequences, we see a man who has shed every identity he has ever worn and does not know what is underneath. When the Gene storyline finally converges with the main narrative in Season 6, the results are devastating and, in a particular scene involving an unexpected phone call, among the most emotionally pulverizing moments the show delivers. Season 6 is a sustained act of artistic courage. In its first half, the show accelerates its criminal plotting to a Breaking Bad-style intensity. The Lalo storyline resolves with shocking speed, the cartel world erupts, and an event in the mid-season finale, one of the most shattering single scenes in the history of either show, fundamentally reorders everything that follows. The second half of Season 6 operates in a register unlike anything that came before. Jimmy McGill has now, fully and irreversibly, become Saul Goodman, the cartoon lawyer of Breaking Bad, all yellow suits in Albuquerque. Watching Odenkirk play this version of the character after 6 seasons of Jimmy McGill is like watching a portrait artist reveal that the lovely landscape they have been painting is actually a face, and the face is screaming. The finale, simply titled Saul Gone, is a masterwork of television closure. It does not offer the operatic destruction that ended Breaking Bad. Instead, it offers something harder and stranger, an act of reckoning that is also an act of love. In a courtroom, in a prison yard, and finally in a moment of simple, devastating honesty, Jimmy McGill reconstitutes himself from the wreckage of Saul Goodman. Whether that constitutes redemption or merely the recognition of its impossibility is a question the show deliberately refuses to answer cleanly. Great art earns that ambiguity. The finale does not offer destruction. It offers something harder, an act of reckoning that is also an act of love. Great art earns that ambiguity. It would be a disservice to discuss Better Call Saul without acknowledging its formal brilliance as a piece of cinema. Few television series have been shot with this level of intentionality. Directors including Vince Gilligan, Thomas Schnauz, Melissa Bernstein, and the late, great Michelle MacLaren bring a visual language to the show that uses framing, light, and geography as emotional information. Albuquerque, its strip malls, its mesa landscapes, its flat, bright sky, becomes a character in its own right, a place of deceptive openness where there is nowhere to hide. The writing room, under Peter Gold's leadership, operates with a precision and ambition that is genuinely rare. The show is patient in ways that could easily read as slow and instead read as profound, because every quiet scene is doing structural work. Dialogue is layered with subtext. Long stretches of silence carry enormous weight. The writers trust their actors, and their audience, to a degree that is both unusual and deeply respectful. Dave Porter's score deserves its own paragraph. Understated and melancholy, it gives the show an emotional texture that sits somewhere between jazz funeral and highway lament. The recurring motifs that emerge around specific characters, particularly around Kim and around Chuck, become almost unbearably moving by the time the later seasons deploy them. Better Call Saul arrived as a spin-off and ended as a monument. It proved that long-form television serialization, at its absolute best, can achieve something that very few art forms can: the simulation of a lifetime. We spent 7 years watching Jimmy McGill. We watched him fail and scheme and love and destroy. We watched him make the 1,000 small choices that become, over time, a life. By the end, we knew him in the way you know a person you have grown up with. The show's great subject is self-deception, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, and why we deserve what we want. Jimmy McGill is extraordinarily gifted at telling those stories, both to other people and to himself. The show's great question, the one it poses across 6 seasons and answers in its final half hour, is what happens when there is no one left to perform those stories for? What happens when a man runs out of audience? The answer, and it is a beautiful, painful, earned answer, is that the performance ends, and the person beneath it is still there. Whether that person can live with what he has done, and what he has cost the people who loved him, is the final, human, irreducible question that Better Call Saul leaves ringing in the air. Better Call Saul is not merely one of the best television series of its decade. It is one of the finest works of sustained narrative art produced in any American medium in the 21st century. It is patient where most television is anxious, humane where most crime drama is callous, and formally ambitious where most streaming content is content to be merely competent. It is a show about a con man that never once cons its audience. Watch it carefully, watch it slowly, give it the attention it gives its characters. It will repay you in ways that linger long after the credits of its final episode roll. That last image, a small smile, a moment of genuine connection in an unexpected place, may be the most hopeful thing this brilliant, heartbreaking series ever offers. It is enough. It is more than enough.